Time for a Monday edition. Martin and Marlow, they're all Monday edition. But you know what, Chuck? I got to say, I'm fired up on a Monday, feeling good about the sports world, what we saw over the weekend, especially late at night. You did tweet out you didn't have enough vodka for one more overtime. Schenner got the message and delivered. Blues win it in overtime. Boy, it was about to be a really depressing Monday. And it wasn't decided until, almost 1 a.m. on a Monday. But, boy, not just the Blues, but I feel like the city, the Blues fan base, they needed that bad.
100% to quote our guy, Colton Parayko. Now, I'd like your opinion. Last night, maybe it's just because for the first couple games of this playoff series, I was at work, so I'm kind of locked into working, surprisingly enough.
No.
But last night, because I was at home not working, and I was more able to watch the game, enjoy it from home, for me, this is the first game of the three that actually felt as much as possible in 2020 with no fans at a neutral site. It's the first game that felt like an actual Stanley Cup playoff hockey game.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the other times when you're at work on these 9:30 starts, for example, Sunday night, we're done at 10:30. I'm like, I can sit here and watch for a while. I don't really want to miss it, but you get in your car, you listen for a while. But if you stay, you're there till midnight or 1. So you got to make that transition home, as opposed to what you were doing, what you're saying. You're a fan. You're a big old fan. You're off for the just a big old fan watching the game. And it's been a while since I think I've been emotionally invested in sports. I think that's what was different. Now, I know Friday night, I was off work Friday and was watching it, but it did feel different last night just because of the urgency, the need for it. And, what's interesting with Jake Allen, you play him, and Berube in the postgame, he didn't say, well, you got the back-to-backs. He said, we needed to change. We need to put somebody else in there. I mean, he didn't hide from the fact, because everybody's like, well, it's only because of the back-to-back. They have to do it because of the back-to-back. Well, he didn't have to do it last night, and I think it just goes to show, once again, Berube is going to do whatever the F he's got to do. And so Jake, it's never perfect. The poor guy, he plays really well, but then there's moments here and there people are bitching about stuff. But Jake gives him a lift. Shen had been one of those guys, and this is kind of his career, I think, where he'll play really, really well and just doesn't get the goal. And you just wonder, like, when's that going to happen? And you have no Tarasenko, no Steen. Unfit to play, Charlie, is the term. I like that a lot. I don't know what the hell that means, but I like it.
Yeah, you know what? Hockey always gets it right with the way they name things like this. For years, whenever a guy gets a day off or if he's not at a practice, they call it maintenance, which is the perfect term. And now unfit to play, whatever that means, if it's an injury. Now, in other sports, in the COVID world, that would make sense because without saying, hey, this guy, and I'm not trying to say this about a Blues player, but with some of these other sports that are not in a bubble, we say, okay, they're on the IL, but the player won't declare that he has COVID, but everybody knows that he does. I think unfit to play makes a lot of sense right now. Don't think at all. That's the case, obviously, with Tarasenko and Steen. But it's funny because I've always thought in the NBA that the phrase load management is a terrible phrase. Like, no one thought that through. There's so many obvious sexual jokes when you make that and say, okay, LeBron James, he's not playing tonight. Load management. Hockey gets it right with maintenance. Hockey gets it right with unfit to play 100%.
And people wondering, well, are they kind of down on Tarasenko? I'm like, if he could play, he'd play. Let's be honest. If he's got, at this point, if they could play, they would. Blues give us not only the emotional lift, but also hope that maybe there's a series. Because what would be more depressing than waiting 5 months for the Stanley Cup champions who, let's be honest, in the last year and a half have become bigger than they ever were. And more people care and more people are interested. There are probably fans who got on board last spring, summer, and now love it and live for the games. What would be more effing depressing than if we finally got the season going and they go either 0 for Edmonton or they bow out quickly? I mean, I think what you wanted at least, at minimum, was a good series. I just think it would have been incredibly depressing, even though they've got the cup, even though the franchise is in a great spot. after the long layoff, if they came back and laid an egg, it just would have been pretty shitty.
Yeah, especially if they would have been swept in this series. Now they still might lose this series. When you're watching these games, I don't see one team at all as being better than the other team. They look damn well equal. Now you can make the case, okay, if Binnington starts playing well, if the Blues can get as close as possible, if Barbashev can come back, and if Steiner and Tarasenko can be back close to 100%, and maybe that's not the case. I think if you have to miss a couple games in the Stanley Cup playoffs, like if you're unfit to play enough to not play, and then you come back the next game, I don't think it's fair to even assume those guys are close to 100%. So, but look, if Barbie comes back, if you can get Tarasenko and Steen back for some of these games, and if Binnington shows flashes of 2019 Binnington, I think the Blues can absolutely win this series. And look, at this point, it's going to be at least a 5-game series. You hope it goes longer. But even watching last night, it was another one of those games. It gets to overtime. Any bounce, and the Blues all of a sudden, with some bad puck luck, are down 3-0. They still can't figure it out at all on the power play. When you watch that, it's almost just mind-numbing to see how you can't even get a shot on goal, especially after you have the power play at the end of the game, where they don't have a shot. And then they get the power play in overtime. Just knowing what happened in the previous power play, wouldn't you just throw the first puck possible on net? Like, it's just crazy to me the second time around they still can't get a shot off.
And this is when they need the fans in the stands, because what do fans just yell, shoot the puck? That's all fans, and even I think media were like, shoot the puck. Years ago, I forget the moment or whatever, but it was probably a playoff game, and Al McInnes is on that elevator. We used to go up and down at Enterprise Center, and it was about a particular player, but I said, God, why didn't he just shoot it more? He goes, you think? He goes, you think it'll go in? And he goes, guess what? It's not going in if he doesn't shoot it. And I think the Blues have done that for a long time. It is kind of crazy, as good as they've been, when they had too many men on the ice. Didn't you say, oh, God, they do this all the time? They used to really have a problem with it. And then the power play being bad. Don't these feel like familiar Blues topics over the last year plus, even though they've been great?
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of like with the Cardinals. We always talk about whenever there's a soft tossing left-hander, the Cardinals are going to do poorly. Like, I don't even know if that's accurate, but it just feels like it's accurate, because I feel like we've been talking about that for 10 years. Yeah, it's interesting, because if you go on Twitter while you're watching the game, it's just hilarious. I laugh too, because as much as I say, oh, you got to shoot the puck, these are the best players on earth. They're the best players on earth, and they're the team that won the Stanley Cup last year. They know what they're doing. It's obviously not as easy as us, as we're sitting drinking alcohol and going to Twitter. These guys suck. They can't even shoot the puck. Like, clearly Vancouver's doing something right. But again, after you have the terrible power play at the end of the game, and also you keep reading and hearing about these bouncy boards in Edmonton. I don't even care if you shoot the puck 3 feet high, and maybe it just caroms off somewhere and just gives you some type of chance. It's so demoralizing when you have a power play and you don't score, let alone you don't get a shot off. I mean, that's why it's so impressive the Blues won last night. Think about the momentum swing. And maybe momentum means less nowadays with no fans, but still, if I'm Vancouver and I kill off a penalty and I don't even give up a shot, I mean, that would give me a lot of juice for right when that power play ends.
The best in the bricks. It's more than just a slogan. Why not make your home or garage or chimney look its best by fixing the bricks? That's what B&G Tuck Pointing can do for you. Bricks look their best with proper tuck pointing. Call Rich Galati and his team at 314-363-0525. And by team, of course, we include his daughters Bella and Gabrielle. Or go online, bgtuckpointing.com. A proud St. Louis-based company that supports the hometown St. Louis Blues. Yes, they love their hockey. Chimney repair, foundation repair, caulking, waterproofing. They do it all. Have you driven around St. Louis? We have a lot of brick buildings, and if they need repair, you know who to call. Consider me among the many satisfied customers. Call 363-0525 525-363-0525 or go online, bgtuckpointing.com, and find out what it means to be the best in the bricks.
We're talking about unfit to play and terminology. It's funny because baseball has, the COVID list or the IL, and you could put IL COVID as opposed to shoulder, elbow, whatever. The other day, John Mozeliak put Austin Gomber on the COVID list, and we're all like taking note on the Zoom. He's like, now hold on. He doesn't have COVID, okay? And it was a manipulation of, I guess he potentially could have been exposed, but it was also a way to like do roster management. It was such a great Cardinal Mozeliak tactical way of moving people around. And I'm thinking, if I'm Austin Gomber, I'm like, hey, dude, don't put me on the COVID list. Get that stupid scarlet letter. That just felt like the most Cardinal move ever. He's on the COVID list, but however, he doesn't have COVID.
Yes, and it's also the most baseball thing ever. I love baseball, but it's managed from commissioner down so poorly, which is the reason why the players and the owners constantly fight over everything. Just look at what's going on in baseball, where we still have the stupid 40-man roster, which, by the way, is stupid in normal years. And it's the dumbest thing on earth in 2020 with COVID-19 that you have to make all of these moves and still protect the integrity of your 40-man when the Cardinals literally have how many guys out with COVID? What is it, 10? I mean, they're bringing up guys, with all due respect. Like when we're watching these games over the weekend, there's nothing more fun than watching a major league debut. It's so great for these guys, unless, unfortunately, you're Raul Ramirez. But we also have to understand that, with all due respect, some of these guys should not be in the big leagues. And I'm not trying to be a hater, but the only reason some of these guys are in the big leagues is because 10 of the normal Cardinals are not on the team right now. And you also already have a 28-man roster, and you have a 29-man roster with a doubleheader. So you're having guys who either aren't ready. Like some of these guys probably will be ready for the big leagues in a year or two, but they have to be called up because there's nobody else. Some of these guys probably would never make it to the big leagues except for this crazy year of 2020 in a pandemic because 10 Cardinal players are on the COVID IL. I laugh when I look at all these transactions, and baseball was not able to figure out in 1 year how to figure it out in terms of service time and a 40-man roster, because we have teams like the Marlins and the Cardinals having to make 10 transactions with a 40-man roster. That's insane.
I love it. We're talking Cardinal baseball. Martin and Marlow, presented, as always, by Triad Bank, Marie de Villa, Senior Living, Appliance Discounters, and B&G Tuck Point. We're going to get to some great takes from Charles. Who's presenting the Marlow Moments today?
Marlow Moments, as always, brought to you by our fine sponsors, Kirkwood Pizzeria, Kennelwood Pet Resorts. I'm looking at Otis right now. He's chilling. I got a little trip back home to Ohio coming up, but I think I'm going to take Otis with me. So we won't need Kennelwood for that. But normally when we take a trip, we take Otis to Kennelwood. It's all good. My lawn looks great. That's because of St. Louis Lawn Care. Tim Jankerson also has St. Louis equipment. And Corner Butcher. I have some beautiful bratwurst that I just thawed. Because Corner Butcher, when I go there in Fenton, I usually get about half of my meat fresh that I can grill immediately. And then they have all these frozen options, take-home dishes. So about half of it, I put it in the freezer. So you have it whenever, ready to rock and roll. I like to just kind of grill all at once. And I'll just grill like 15, 20 things. I'll get it done. I'll put it in Tupperware, and I'll eat it for the rest of the week. Thanks to Corner Butcher in Fenton, Mike Diffley and family owned and operated. They're fantastic.
How about the COVID shout-outs? Let's give one to Jim Thomas. JT has been in quarantine, locked up there in Edmonton. And on Saturday, he said, all right, folks, here's the question. Should I do my laundry? He said, or should I just forget it at this point, get ready to pack up and go home? He did the laundry because he said he's a half-full kind of guy, then the Blues win. And I think he wrote about how he had yet to see the Blues win a game. And David Perron in the postgame on Sunday said, JT, we saw the article, needed to give you a win. How cool is that the guys are even aware? Although they've got tons of downtime, they're probably reading more than ever. But COVID shout-out, JT, got the laundry done, and he's still staying. Also, to Chuck Marlow, with the tweet of the weekend on Friday, I was at Cousin John's, your neighbors. We were having some floor work done, so I was actually staying over there. And Kim took the kids camping, which is another topic, maybe for today or another day, because camping is – I'm glad she took the kids. Let's just be honest. But you had I'm sitting there, and Cousin John goes, oh, Charlie just had a great tweet. And it was the Ford Focus. So the Cardinals, which it sounded comical on Thursday night when it was announced, we're headed up to Chicago. We'll rent 41 cars. Of course, no, it wasn't 41. Just said we're renting cars. And then the media had to know, Moha, how many cars will you need? 41 if you need to know. It sounded made up. I mean, we're thinking about Cannonball Run and planes, trains, and automobiles. But your video, I watched it, but I don't get, is it a commercial? Explain to the fine folks who didn't see it, because most did.
Well, when I heard about the 41 rental cars, and also you have all the players, Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader, they're all tweeting out the army of cars there. It's from one of the Fast and the Furious movies. I can't remember which one, but when I saw all the rental cars, that's the first thing I thought of, was this scene where they're trying to deke the cops. You know, there's a couple cars the cops are trying to chase. So they go into this garage, and then they just roll out like hundreds of cars at once, so the cops don't know which of the cars they're actually chasing. So that's the first thing I thought of when I saw the rental cars. I do think there's so many hilarious things about this. Like Harrison Bader stopped apparently and took a selfie on 57, and I guess they took 57 because 55 had construction. 70 to me is usually the one that's terrible with construction. But I was listening to the Zoom call on Saturday with Adam Wainwright, and I think we all can agree that there's no greater human being on this earth probably than Adam Wainwright. It also just shows you sometimes, though, how in a way professional athletes are not just like us. You know what I'm saying? How many times have we all driven to Chicago? 5 million times, whether it's for fun or for work, covering a Cubs game, whatever it is. And Wayno on the Zoom call said, I'm surprised that there's not a quicker highway from St. Louis to Chicago besides this little 2-lane highway. So I'm sure they took 57 because 55 had construction. We all know 55 is a wider highway, but still it shows you, like, Adam Wainwright's my age. He's probably never driven to Chicago. Right. He's probably gotten private planes for his whole life. And look, Adam Wainwright, he's still the everyman. We love the guy. But think about that. He's probably never driven from St. Louis to Chicago, and he's been a Cardinal for like 20 years.
There's the media question we need to ask. Have you ever driven to Chicago? You're right, probably not. But all of this, what they're going through, bad news, stuck at home, even stuck at a hotel, having to drive, they're feeling more and more human, aren't they? All these guys, like, just shit happens to everybody, especially in 2020. And it just happens to be going on with the baseball team that everybody follows. I think them driving cars, as weird as it all sounded, it did feel like a screenplay. They seem more human than ever. But we'll give a COVID shout out also. You mentioned him, Roel Ramirez, who was part of the FAM trade. Do you find yourself with every one of these debuts, do you find yourself going back and looking to say, now, which was this guy in the – hold on, was he in the Marco Gonzalez deal? Was this from the Piscotty deal? Have you found yourself doing that, or do you remember all these off the top of your head?
Not all of them. For example, the one guy that I didn't remember. I remember the FAM deal was, if I'm not mistaken, a 3-player deal. And it was Genesis Cabrera, Justin Williams, and Roel Ramirez. I think it was 3.
Correct.
So that was the one player that, no, I wouldn't have remembered that without you see him. Okay, well, how did he come here? And you always remember, though, one thing about Mo is he always gets extra guys. And I think that's very smart in these deals. And in many cases, the second player sometimes ends up being the better player in the trade. That's not the marquee guy. You can go back to David Freese. Was it Peter Borges where Randall Grichuk was kind of, a throw-in? But if you get multiple guys, you have a good chance of one of them hitting, even like Luke Voigt. I mean, when Luke Voigt is traded, if I'm not mistaken, Chasen Shreve is probably the bigger name in that deal, and Giovanni Gallegos ends up being an absolute stud. I think it makes sense in baseball. If you get 2 or 3 guys, there's a good chance, or there's a better chance that one of them will pan out.
I wish Mo would just say in every deal, like when he's talking to another executive, okay, we're going to need the extra guy. What do you mean? Well, we always take an extra guy just in case. But poor Roel Ramirez, who was in the FAM trade, Seth Elledge, by the way, was the Sam Tuivalala trade, which I had forgotten. I had to look it up. Max Schrock was part of the Piscotty. So I've been doing a little bit of in-game homework. But Roel Ramirez had one of those moments, the big league debuts, it was fun. You had 7 of them over the course of the weekend, which is crazy. Young guys, as you mentioned earlier, players who probably, for the most part, wouldn't be here. But and I think Mike Shildt was in a spot because they're thinking, listen, we got a gazillion doubleheaders. We're running out of people because we got guys on the COVID list. I still thought Ramirez could have come out a little earlier. I mean, at some point, don't you think maybe the third homer you say, all right, I got to take him out. Were you surprised?
I was, and I feel bad because Yasmani Grandal is on my fantasy team, and he hadn't hit a homer all year. I was very happy that he hit a home run. But the first 2, so let me try to remember here. I believe it was Moncada and then Grandal. If you go back and look at those pitches, they were literally middle fastballs. I mean, big league hitters, and if you're throwing, I say only 94, if you throw a middle fastball to any of those guys, they're going to hit it out. And the first 2 were just right down the middle. I think if you're Mike Shildt, I agree. He's thinking we have 1 million innings to cover. I've heard Mike Shildt say this a ton of times where he's like, I wanted to allow him to walk off the mound and have a little positivity. So he's probably saying, okay, it's been bad, 2 homers. Let's let this guy try to get the final out here and have a little bit of confidence. And then the third one goes out. At that point, I don't think you can allow him to allow 4 home runs in his debut. I hope this doesn't crush his confidence. It made me think of Mike Myers. And then I looked that one up. He gave up 9 runs, Mike Myers. That game, wasn't it Sunday Night Baseball?
I was there as a fan, and I almost never go, rarely go. But it was a friend of my dad's in town, and he happened to have his wife's birthday or something, and he rented out a box. So I'm like, for weeks, I'm going to the game on a Sunday night. Probably made you work. And we're sitting in the suite. We just get there. Beers are flowing. And the game was over. Like, was it the first inning?
I remember looking this up, and it was statistically, it was one of the worst starts in the history of baseball. I want to say it was either top 5 or top 10 worst starts. If you do it by that 0 to 100 rating, we should look this up. But I want to say he got into the second inning. So we'll have to check this. But I want to say it was something like 1 1/3 or 1 2/3 and 9 earned runs.
That sounds about right. I was there for that. And then in 2003, I should look this up. Cousin John and I were at Wrigley, and it was Dan Herron. And I forget all the circumstances, but Dan Herron got left out. There was one, he was a young guy. The other 4, and the other 4.
What's that? Oh, the other 4?
Yeah, the other 4, top 5 human beings.
He'll be a first ballot Cardinals Hall of Famer, no doubt. What I think is also really funny about the situation is that think about how they've handled Jack Flaherty. Now, we all know Jack Flaherty is the future. He's the ace. He's the stud. He hasn't pitched in forever because he throws opening day, and then you have this ridiculous layoff. And so they're also trying to massage when he comes back. I believe it's going to be Wednesday. But they want to give him side sessions. They want to give him a bullpen so that he's back and ramped up. And Waino's my age. He's 38. And it's like, start the first game, throw as many innings as you can. And he could have probably went further. But that's what's great about Adam Wainwright. Like, that's where he is in his career. He's still really good, by the way. But he's also the guy who, hey, I don't care if it's been a month since I've pitched after a pandemic. I'm 38 years old. I'm a veteran. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to set the tone. I'm going to be the guy that throws 5 innings. We win the game. And everything moving forward now, the Cardinals are in a good spot.
You love sports? Sure. But what you really love is a winning team and a great story. That's exactly what you get with Appliance Discounters. It started with just 3 employees. 1 location, 3 employees. Denise Bradley, her husband John, her brother Tony. That's it. More than a decade ago. And for years, you've heard me talking about them. Here's why. My dishwasher
It's a Bosch, the quietest dishwasher on the market. Remember Grandma's dishwasher always, that's not what's going on with us. We got it at Appliance Discounters. Our washer, our dryer, our stove, and our refrigerator, and Electrolux. Yes, the Kill Coins put these babies to the test. During the quarantine, the MVP at our house, the dishwasher, it got a workout. We've got big name brands we're talking about at a great price. St. Charles, Baldwin, Maplewood, South County, and in the city. The best bet, just get online. TheApplianceDiscounters.com. Our savings are your savings. And now you get a Cubs series where there's 5 games at Wrigley in 3 days. My Cub friends love the doubleheaders, and their rationale is because the Cubs bullpen's so bad. They said these 7-inning games are actually to our advantage. It's something I didn't think about. Nobody cares. It's 2020. The rules are weird. Just get through it. But it might help the Cubs to play some of these 7-inning games.
Especially Kyle Hendricks. The dude can throw a Maddox complete game anyway. He can throw – I mean, the first game of this is at his breaking stuff. So if Kimbrel is back, that's obviously huge for the Cubs. And you're going to need multiple closers. That's where I think the Cardinals are still even in a good spot. Even with all their guys on the COVID list, you have a lot of people who could close. I think, Andrew Miller, when he goes out there, I don't think you have great confidence in him, and he still got it done. And you have Gio Gallegos. And how about Alex Reyes? Alex Reyes, how much fun was that to watch him striking out studs, throwing 99 miles per hour? Wouldn't you love to have him as your closer for the Cardinals this year?
And I think the fan base probably almost forgot about him, because then you come – not only has he been injured for several years, he was he ever officially on the COVID list, or he was just out for a while at the beginning of camp, right? And so –
No, they said –
okay, so then you add that to the mix. The poor guy can't buy a break. By the time he pitched on Saturday, don't you think the majority of fans watching were saying, oh, my God, it's Alex Reyes? I think – and you can't count on him. I think the Cardinals had gotten to that point. But don't you think the majority of people watching had almost forgotten that he was on the team?
Yes. And even knowing that, I think you could make the case that the most exciting part of the entire Cardinals weekend was Alex Reyes' inning. Because he struck out the side, because he looked so good. Now, we've seen that before in small stretches. We know with him it's all about staying healthy. And maybe it's totally unrealistic to think he'll ever be a starter. Hell, maybe it's unrealistic to think he'll be a closer. But with the way baseball is nowadays, if he can be a multi-inning reliever, if he can go out there and throw 2 innings every 3 days or so and rack up 4 strikeouts, he can still be an amazing weapon. You just hope if he can ever get anywhere close to the Alex Reyes that we saw coming up. And look, velocity-wise, he's still there. If he's throwing 99, his arm is there. With him, it's all about, can he stay healthy? We were on the radio the other day, and it's unfortunate because Alex Reyes has had so many injuries that you can't actually remember them. We were talking about with Cam Jansen. He's like, and what are his injuries? And I'm thinking, okay, Tommy John, he had the lat. Remember, he broke his hand. He punched a wall. Like, you have to go look it up. This man has had so many injuries in his career. He just has to stay healthy.
You just tell Cam unfit to play, okay?
There you go.
Folks, make sure you subscribe. We're now available on iTunes. Get it delivered directly into your phone. It's real simple. Make sure you subscribe. iTunes available, also Spotify and YouTube. Martin and Marlow, the Tom Brady edition. I believe this is episode 12. You could go Aaron Rodgers, Roger Staubach, mostly 12s, I think, of quarterbacks primarily. Also, before we close out the Happy Monday talk, a lot of happy talk. Last week, the soccer announcement, St. Louis City SC. And some people have emailed and complained about it. You know what I compare it to? When we mentioned the Battlehawk, when the name came out, I said, oh, that's stupid. And now we've got that giant Battlehawks poster in our sports office. And I love the logo. It looks kind of like Gallagher or something. And I love that name. It was so unique. So I don't get too caught up in names, especially like an immediate reaction when people hate things. I think it's fine.
It's fine. And it's very soccer. Let's be real.
Sure.
I think if you thought it was going to be the St. Louis Panthers or the St. Louis Tigers, just name any type of American mascot, I think you weren't probably reading the tea leaves. You knew they were going to go this soccer route where you have FC, SC, city, club type deal. Now, just in general, I don't love the soccer nicknames, but that's because I'm an American. I'm the ugly American, and we're used to what we have here, which is Cardinals, Blues, insert nickname. So this is an homage to soccer around the world. I think you can make the case, though, that, look, St. Louis City, the city of St. Louis, we need the city of St. Louis to come back. We need it to be a thing again. We need people to live down there, businesses to be down there. So could that be a uniting factor? I guess. It's kind of funny because some people say, oh, it's a divide. We already had a divide between city and county. Now you make it more of a divide. But clearly, if you think that way, you haven't paid any attention to how Carolyn Kindle Betts and this group has rolled this team out. They have gone above and beyond to include everyone, every piece of messaging, whether it's Sterling K. Brown. They announced their deal. I was there at Matthews Dickey. Anytime they said, this is our town, Belleville, Oakville, North County, South County, they have made it as inclusive as you can possibly be. So if you think they're trying to divide with the name, you're totally wrong. I get it if you don't like the name, but this has probably been the most inclusive group I've ever seen roll out a sports team.
Chuck, next week, let's talk camping and why I think it's overrated. But also, I think I'm going to have to talk about the fact that I'm fat because I did get a physical. I've had a lot of medical checkups lately, just getting them done, getting them off the list. And I was looking at this sheet. You know, they do your height, your weight, and all this, and then you leave. And I looked down, and it said my BMI was 31. Oh, no. So then I Googled, like, 30, so like body mass index. Now, they didn't do the calipers and test us like we did when we did the weight loss challenge. It just computes your height and weight. And I looked it up, and it said, I think it said if you're like 25 to 30, you're fat. And if you're 31 and above, you're obese. So I'm telling you, pal, next time you see me in the office, fruits and veggies. Got to get this BMI under control.
All right, I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I've been in that spot because I remember when I was in really good shape, actually, like in college or right after. You know, I'm about 6'4". I would usually walk around about 220, 225 when I was in really good shape. But I worked out a ton. And I remember going to that, and the BMI said the same thing, that I was either overweight or obese. I'm like, this is absurd if you think that my body should be 6'4", 190 or 195, a weight I had not been since I think maybe my senior year of high school. I remember, I know we got to go. I remember another time I went to the doctor, and this was, I think I was either last year of college or first year out. And he's asking me, you know, do you smoke? Do you do drugs? Do you drink? I'm like, I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. Do you drink alcohol? I'm like, yeah. And this is me college drinking. He's like, well, how often do you drink? And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to be honest here. I was like, well, I probably drink 3 or 4 times a week because I'm in college. And he's like, well, how many drinks per session? And I'm lying here because in college, all you did was binge drink. But I tell him something close to the truth. And he goes, you know, you're an alcoholic, right? Like, this doctor literally told me that. And I go, no, I'm actually just in college and I'm totally fine. But yeah, if you go by some of those things in terms of drinks and of BMI, it'll say all kinds of crazy, nutty things that, I'm sorry, they're just not true. True.
I hope every doctor writes it down. And they're like, how often do you drink? You go, twice a week. And then they write down 4 to 5. And they're like, right. How many drinks per setting? Like, oh, I don't know, couple. Then they write down, that's 6. They know that everyone's freaking lying. But I hadn't seen my BMI in a while. It was just kind of freaking depressing. I'm going to attack. But thank you for allowing me to continue to be fat. It reminds me in college, one of my friends, his brother got really mad because his brother went and got a physical. And like the assistant comes in first and then puts his chart. And this is like Elaine and Seinfeld, but put the chart on the back of the door. And my friend's brother grabbed the chart and opens it. And it's got his name and his birthday and all this. And it says, the doctor had written his previous review. It said, I'm staring at a mildly obese male. And he just got like furious that he was called mildly obese. So I guess that's where we're at. And we're back at it next Monday. Martin and Marlow, make sure you subscribe. We mentioned that already. And it's brought to you by B&G Tuck Pointing, Appliance Discounters, Marie de Villa, Senior Living, and Triad Bank. And Chuck has brought it. Kennelwood, I think you even rhymed earlier. You said Kennelwood, they're so good, like an accidental rhyme. Corner Butcher, I'm going there you know what? I haven't been there in a while. I'm going out there. I'm going to stock up. Now that the kids are going back to school, got to load up and be prepared. I'm headed that way. And one of these days, we ask your guy. Ask the Jankerson if he's related.
I will.
To Dennis, the fire guy. St. Louis Lawn Equipment, right? No, St. Louis Equipment. I'm butchering your sponsors, buddy. I'm sorry.
Well, I already mentioned them, but it's always great to mention them twice.
Yeah.
Kennelwood, Kirkwood Pizzeria, St. Louis Equipment, St. Louis Lawn Care, and the one and only Corner Butcher in Fenton.
Let this serve as an awkward ending to Martin and Marlow.